Yep.
Okay, so we're live. We are live. Finally, we're back. And this is the expert council of talking about JKD. Everybody here is 1.5 generations away from Bruce Lee. And that means that learn from guys that learned when Bruce was alive and training with Bruce when he was alive. And today's topic, or this panel of experts, is what is Bruce Lee's most important saying, or what is the thing that Bruce Lee uh, communicated that has been the most influential in their lives? So we got a assorted panel of people here. We've got Ken O'Neill, as you know, Ken O'Neill, and we've got Stan. We have Stan, who's they're all in St. Louis. I'm the only one not in St. Louis. This is part of that original East St. Louis crowd that JKD in the United States. There was a huge. People don't know that now. They don't know that in the '80s. They knew that St. Louis was a mecca for JKD actually because of what happened with. Carl James and also Mike Sandlin, they were responsible for blowing up that part of the country. And then Jay D'Amato started having seminars that drew people from around the world to St. Louis. And that's where actually that spawned the giant seminar circuit for Dan and Asanto actually was from Jay. So these guys are from those time periods. These guys predate your 12th generation seminar trained would be whatever name they want to call themselves now, Si Gung or whatever. We don't really use those terms because we're from the combat JKD branch is what I was, because I was directly trained with Mike Sandlin. And so we're all the guys on here, we're all trained with Mike Sandlin. Some of them trained with Carl James quite a bit. I only trained with Carl one time, so I can't really talk about Carl James very much. And they trained with Dan and Asanto a lot more than I did. I trained with him twice. I think that's it. But we're a different branch, different group. So we have a different perspective. We keep it a lot more real. We're a lot more, we're not, well, Stan's pretty politically correct. The rest of us aren't. We don't care. I don't care. But anyway, so the question really is then, what did Bruce Lee do or say that's been the most influential on your entire outlook on martial arts, your fighting career, your training career, and where you are now? And I think we'll go to Norm first. So Norm, give us your take on Bruce Lee. It's big influence on you still to this day.
Well, Bruce's greatest influence on me was, as earlier I said before we went on air, was the ability to use in lingo, keep things real. You know, you have to believe in yourself. You have to believe in your skills in order when a situation presents itself that you can go on automatic pilot. You don't have to think. What happens with most martial artists today is they get in their own way. And what I mean by that, they do too much thinking. And then they try to emulate Bruce, which is impossible because Bruce has a whole different set of genetics, body makeup, and all things that we cannot do the things that he did. And they get it twisted thinking that they see these elaborate things that he exaggerates some things just to make it look good so people would be interested in it. That's not the way that he would really fight. You know, that's the way our Sifu, Carl and Mike, they didn't fight like there was nothing pretty about it. You know, wasn't no fluff. It was straight to the point, application-based training. And that's what I do. That's what I firmly believe in. It has saved me when I've gotten into a situation where I had to use my art. Is direct and to the point, no fluff. The thing was going on with a lot of martial arts now. Everybody's doing all this stuff, all this fancy moves and exaggerated moves, and they teach their students things. They don't field test anything, so you don't know if it's going to work, you know. And then in the training, everybody's cooperating with each other, so there's no resistance. How do you know if a technique is going to work? Is that if your training partner just cooperates with you all the time and offers you no resistance? There's no way to tell that. So I think that really people should go within themselves and really have a conversation with yourself and say, I need to get out of my way. I need to keep this as real as possible. you know, if someone approaches me and is going to attack me, I could finger jab him in the eye, but why would I have to fake him down low, do a flying spinning back kick and all that stuff when only a finger jab would do the trick? That's my point. I don't like all this other fluffy stuff that these people do, and I like you say, Chris, the 12th generation JKD people. You know, where did that come from? I really have a problem with that because they go around here and they're having everybody think that that's what Bruce wanted, and it's not. Bruce did not intend for everybody's quote unquote JKD to look alike. And if you watch these guys, they all look alike because they're all doing the same thing. They in their own way and want to allow themselves to express themselves.
Yeah, perfect. I mean, I agree with everything you said, Norm. Of course, I agree with that. And yeah, and to answer your question though, why so many of these guys are doing this, like the 12th generation, because it sells for seminars. They can't just say we're going to keep working on the finger jab. They're going to say we're going to do these different things. We're going to add these silat entries. We're going to add this Kali thing, which is only United States people say Kali, other than Pikiti, because Leo was in the United States for such a long time. But anyway, they want to have something more to sell. So, you know, it's like selling a car. You could sell it. The car is still going to get you to A to B, regardless of whether it's got the leather interior or the vinyl interior, right? And if you really care about going to A to B, it's only about the car, the motor, and the drivetrain, and that sort of stuff. It's not about the interior, but these people are making it about the interior, in my opinion, and in my very expert opinion, I would say. And so we'll get back to that, but let's get everybody's viewpoint out right now. So let's go to Stan. Let's go to Stan. Stan, give us your profound thoughts on on this subject.
Well, I've sort of matured over the years, so I like to start off, laying a preface that I just give gratitude to the knowledge and the skill that I acquired. First of all, the graciousness and the generosity of Guru Dana Nasano for accepting call to be a student. Call only trained in California, I believe it was, for about maybe 7 to 8 months, and he brought back to John Fine in East St. Louis. So I have to acknowledge that our acquisition of John Fine was not complete. It was limited to that point. But from my understanding, at that time, Guru Dan's group was training in his backyard. So they had really sort of reduced everything to the essentials. So what Carl brought back was just the essential program that they were actually doing in California, which means it was stripped quite a bit. There were boxing, there was low line kicking, there was rudimentary trapping, and the interception technique, attack by draw, attack by combinations, and so forth. So it was really what I would call stripped down to very essential. This is what Carl brought back East St. Louis. So I don't claim to be an authority of the total John Fine or the total JKD. I can just speak of what I experienced. So you asked me what phrase that Bruce uttered that made the most influence. I think it was liberation, because at that time people just thought in terms of systems. If you were a judo expert, then you would think that if I go against a karateka, okay, I'm going to jam his kick and take him down. The same thing with the karate guy. If he's attacked by a judo guy, say, well, I'm going to sidekick this guy and defeat him. So everybody was in their little box. So Bruce comes along and he just explodes the box, so to speak, and say, unless you are willing to accept the opposite, unless you're willing to test your material, you cannot grow. Because I think when you speak of liberation, you also think of growing. So as Norma spoke of, you have to find out who you are. We can't mimic what Bruce did because, as Norm said, his genetics were different, his makeup and his background is different. So that's the thing I think, we have to consider. So each person has to find through the training what they do best, and what they can excel at and what they're weak at, and then grow from there. So again, I would think that the term liberation just opens your mind and you start to research different theories, and it makes you think, and you start to go outside of the box.
Okay, but let me probe you a little bit here, Stan, because everything you said again is great. I mean, this is gold. This so far is gold. I mean, this is platinum. This is beyond gold, in my opinion. If I stumbled across this back when I was trying to learn, I would have been happier than anything. Of course, we didn't have this sort of technology or anything, but what did you do specifically? I mean, I know it's a hit and miss. It's a trial and error because everything you're talking about, all of us are done. Ken, Norm, and I, and you have all done the same path that you're talking about. But what are the ways to liberation, Stan? What are the ways to liberation, or what are some of the ways you can try to get liberation?
The hardest thing is to have complete honesty, to be able to look at yourself and say, "This is who I am. This is what I'm good at. This is what I'm bad at." To see where your limitations are, and also see where the things that you can excel in. So there was no better instructor I can think of than Mike to do that, because Mike would break you in. I mean, if you had any kind of ego or preconceived ideas, Mike Sandler could just open you up and do surgery and extract it. That's why the class was very small in East St. Louis. Even when he was doing what he called combat gung fu, we only had maybe about 6 or 8 students. So once you're stripped of yourself and you can be completely honest, then you can find out what you gravitate towards. This is why everyone would be different. Mike used to have a saying. He used to nickname everybody. He nicknamed me the Snake. Yeah, I didn't know why. I thought, well, you think I'm sneaky? But that was my nickname because he said, you can't see this guy move when he moves. So that was okay. But that's him as a teacher looking at a student and trying to see where I'm growing, what direction I'm growing in. So I think we have to be honest. We have to be open-minded. And as Carl said, we can't prescribe for somebody else. If I'm a good kicker, I can't say Ken has to be a good kicker. Norm, and if I'm a good puncher, I can't say Norm has to be. But I can give them the tools and I can share the training, but they have to go through the process. And this is what I find is lacking in most martial arts today, having that honesty, that sincerity to be able to look at themselves and say, okay, how can I improve who I am and go with that? I hope I didn't go too far off tangent.
No, this is insanely good. I mean, because I'm sitting back and listening to you guys, trying to be like a spectator, and I'm like, this is insanely good. I mean, this is incredible stuff. I mean, what everybody says interlocks as it should. And now I just want to, because you bring up Mike Sandlin, I just want to tell some stuff. Yeah, Mike. See, I train with Mike 4 hours a day, at least sometimes 7 days a week, but always 6 days a week for a year. And he used to say he used to do all that stuff to me, and it was hardcore. And he'd say, I'm going to know every lie you tell yourself. And that's exactly what we had to expose ourselves, which a lot of philosophies and ideologies, they spend a lot of time. You're trying to find yourself, but you'll find yourself from fighting faster than you will meditating. I'll tell you that, because like Norm said, you got to come up against your own ego and your own lies. Because if I'm getting hit in the head, obviously telling myself that I was great is a lie. So there's that. Now about the nicknames, he used to, when he would refer to, he used to talk about Ken and Stan a lot to me. So Ken and Stan, and I would just say, well, okay, what is it about Ken and Stan? And I think he did say to me that you were sneaky. That Stan, I think Mike said you were sneaky, and he would always say about Ken, he's a white guy that can fight. that's what he would always say. So I don't know, so take that for whatever that might be. But I think that leads what you're saying, Stan, leads right into what Ken wants to talk about. Don't you agree, Ken?
Yeah, I guess you could say that. Yeah, my favorite old Bruce quote, from the Tao of JKD. I'll just give you the whole quote. I think it's page 42. I just looked it up real quick. It's not daily increase, but daily decrease. Hacking away at the unessentials, which is in essence what we're all talking about here. Is we're talking about process work, and I think that we've talked about this at other times. What we don't seem to see or be able to find, and I think you've looked more directly for that all over YouTube, et cetera, than the rest of us have. But the real JKD philosophy is that process. It's just like we talked about last time: absorbing what's useful, getting rid of things that don't work for you. I mean, it's an individual journey, like Norm said, and you can't be the same as anyone else who's doing it. It's going to come out different. I mean, if we spent time looking at all the things all of us have done based on that JKD philosophy, we know that there's a commonality, but we've all taken variously different avenues. I mean, I jumped into Aikido for years, and that ended up seeming like almost an impractical thing. And then I figured out how to make it more practical because I played JKD mentality. I made a lot of the takedowns and throws quicker, shorter. They were more functional at close range, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Went off into one of the very early BJJ groups here in St. Louis. The J. D'Amato, once again, was instrumental in connecting with Hickson Gracie and then the Machados. And I spent several years with that, starting all over again, getting the hell beat out of me, actually more brutally than with any of these guys. Mike would put a lot more psychological pressure. I remember him having me do things that just to me were scarier than hell, but I never got injured. But in the BJJ class, I had that and I got injured, and I was in my 40s and a lot of the other guys in their 20s. But what was cool about it is, once again, when I got into the process of figuring out what I could make work from what I already knew, and even making it work on the ground, then I was able to start stopping a lot of these people from even being able to get me on the ground, because I knew I wasn't going to catch up with them anytime fast. That was going to be a process. So I thought, okay, JKD mentality. In essence, metaphorically, how do I stop hit these guys so I don't end up on the ground where now I'm playing their game? So it was a really cool exercise for me, being in an art that was so foreign. I mean, I started with wrestling before I did anything else, but that was competitive. That was high school type stuff. It was nothing. The BJJ was a lot meaner and more raw, especially in the beginning. So, here again, it was the idea of figuring out what I already had, that I could modify, that I could make work, so that I could work against guys doing something else that was very different, So in a nutshell, that was my way of applying the whole JKD mentality of being adaptable and being able to flow, and not being worried about, does this come from here? Does this come from there? And I'm jumping ahead of myself a little, but the idea there was, I found useful things in Aikido. I even found useful things in Chen Tai Chi, doing forms a long time ago. And there's not one art that I ever have studied that I haven't eventually figured out things from it that filled in gaps for me, because we didn't, like those guys will tell you, we didn't spend time on the ground. Back in the old days, we weren't on the ground much, fooling around, So that was a big part of the puzzle that I had to fit in. We also didn't do a ton of time with takedowns and all, so that was there. We had to work with that. And then for me, just continuing to keep that process alive. I've told this story before, but an old student of Stan's in mine, Bill Thomas, one of the early guys that went to Russia and got involved in Russian Sistema, and I remember Bill saying he ran into Dan Inosanto in the airport in LA when he was coming back from Moscow, and he was so excited. He ran up to Guru Dan, and tries to tell him who he is, and from CMA in California or in St. Louis, and telling him, JKD's been in Russia for centuries. They got the same philosophy, and he just kind of like, yeah, okay. Bill said he looked at him like he was kind of crazy, although now, Dan's directly involved in that as well. But the idea being, not being so, not being myopic, not thinking that that necessarily only one particular, like Stan said, being in the box, you're a judo man, you're this man, you're that man. How about just you're an alive, growing, flowing, evolving human being? That's how I see all this. We've had numerous talks before about how this whole approach to life, this whole JKD approach to life, is what taught me how to even figure out how to approach starting businesses. I had no business background. I'm like Stan. I was studied psych and philosophy and comparative religions, and then I got a degree in TV production. Well, that didn't train me for starting a business, but I'll tell you what, I would remember specific things that would pop in my mind that Stan would say to me, that Mike had said to me a long time ago, and all these things funneled into a philosophy of how to approach analyzing anything and creating something with it. And it didn't have to have a darn thing to even do with combat. It was the model that helped me develop my businesses. So to me, that all comes out of that one quote: hacking away at unessential stuff to create something that you want to create, whether it's in the combat field, the martial field, or business or whatever. I'll leave it there.
Yeah. Okay. I'm interested. I'm curious. What quote of Stan's came to you? I want to hear a quote from Stan.
I can't say a specific quote. Stan was always very philosophical, as I was. And
you're kidding. You're kidding. Stan's philosophical? You're kidding me. You're kidding me. That's such a shock to us that Stan was reflective and thinking. It's hard to believe.
Stan was particularly good at conveying to me, in my way of framing it, process work or the analytical process, how to take things apart, how to look at your own body. Like he said, you have to be really honest with yourself and figure out I always knew I wasn't going to be a boxer. To me, boxing was nuts. It just didn't make sense to me. I like things that were more direct. I felt that the whole idea of boxing was, and coaches will say it's counterintuitive. And so I had to play with, what do I need to know from that, though? Because a lot of guys box, just like a lot of guys wrestle. So what I'm trying to say in a nutshell is Stan really helped define for me how to do the process work, the analytical work, And I think even at a time back in the CMAA days, after a lot of the time with Dan and Nate Defensor and Paul Vunak, that process was really cooking in my head. And right then and there, I really kind of went in my own direction very dramatically. So at that time as well, I went in a very different direction from even what our school at the time was doing. And that evolved into me starting my own little place on Clayton Road later. But yeah, it was that, when I was actually with Mike, it was more like Stan and I talked about this a few weeks ago. For me, it's like it was situational training. I mostly remember him putting me in situations. Stan was the one drilling me and a lot of hours, drilling me with the pads, et cetera, the sparring stuff. But Mike would put me in weird situations. A lot of them were extremely scary to me. One of the later ones I remember was a multiple attacker thing. He was probing me, I believe. He was probing me psychologically, showing me my fears, and just letting me wake up to that and figure out what to do about it and how to work it. It was very, very interesting, and sometimes it would take me a while to figure out why he even did what he did. One time, he even went as far as to go, Stan might remember this. I don't know if you were there, but you know the story, I think, at least. I'm standing there, and I had this Chinese buddy of mine, and his uncle had just brought over these really cool Chinese clothes to train in, the big blousey top with the what do you call them, frog buttons or whatever, and the blousey pants, and the wrap around that belt thing and that. And I had this light gray one on, and I went over there, and Mike goes, I like that. And he goes, take that off. Let me try that on. So I take all this stuff off, and I give him all this stuff, and I never saw it again, except on Mike. It was a lot tighter on him, of course. But I know that even that was a test. What am I going to say if my teacher asked me for something? I figured out later that was a very specific test. I never said a word. I never gave him a hard time about it. I just remember walking around scratching my head. Did my instructor just steal my clothes? Oh man, I'll leave it at that.
Okay, so let's take because Norm said something earlier, and I think that what he said is a very 70s thing, and that's that self-realization, because people now, I think, just feel entitled. They feel self-entitled, but they don't examine themselves, like Socrates. They really have an unexamined life. They just have this self-entitled life. So how did you try to get okay? Now, when you were saying that, Norm, about freedom and stuff, And also Stan saying liberation. What was coming to my mind, because I used to say it when I would train guys back, this is years ago, I used to say it to them, cry freedom. Remember Stephen Biko, in South Africa, that cry freedom. That and also with the Scottish war, that was also cry freedom with Mel Gibson. But Norm, how were you able to get out of your own way in the 70s? I mean, come on, because a lot of people don't realize we're talking a lot of decades here, and life was different. Life wasn't what it is now. I mean, it's not narcissistic selfies and everybody giving free information to everybody. It was a rough time back then. And you guys were in East St. Louis, which is not a good place crime wise. So I mean, Norm, how did you seek that? How did you seek getting out of your own way? How did you try to defeat your own ego?
Well, for me, it's kind of, you see, I come from a family where my father was you could call him a street fighter. As a small child, I would see my father in the street getting into it with people and then pine slaps and people getting him in bear hugs, and he clapping both of the ears together and releasing. I saw all this stuff as a child. So with him teaching me how to punch with power, and I think I told you earlier that my father's sister was married to heavyweight boxing champion Archie Moore. So my father used to spar with him, and he taught him how to box and how to hit hard. So he gave that to me. But what made me get in my own way is that I found myself, because I was a kind of scrawny kid, and he had people wanting to bully me, so I had to fight. And the things that I found out that I could do well, because I could always hit hard. I'd knock your socks off, but I couldn't wrestle, because I had no reference point for that. So I had to realize that I've got to do things to keep me from going to the ground while I'm in foreign territory where I don't know how to defend myself. And then you have to just have, like I said, you sit down and have a conversation with yourself. What are you afraid of? What are you really afraid of? What are you not afraid of? What are you willing to do to save your own butt or some of your family members, their loved ones? But how far are you willing to go? You have all those questions you have to sit down and ask yourself. Most people don't. One thing that even with Bruce, and Ken turned me on to a book that I'm reading right now, and it's really obvious. There's a lot of stuff about Bruce that they don't tell in the mainstream representations of him, because Bruce was a doggone street fighter. He was really a little thug. You need to understand that. Him and all his crew, every one of them was street fighters. So when you come from the street fighting, you ain't jumping around with anybody and boxing and fighting. It's direct and to the point, and let's get it over with. So that's a lot of where that came from. Now, when I say he's a stud, I don't mean that he was going out bullying people and doing all kind of crazy things, but he was what today would be called a gang leader. And Jesse Glove and all those guys and James DeMille, all them, those dudes were street fighters, carried guns. See, but the sanitized JKD people, they don't want to know about that, and they don't realize that. But all of that, Bruce's experiences that he had in the street is what led him down to the path, because he was looking for things to fight as quickly as possible, jumping down these flower stances and waving your hands and woo. He was not about that. And he couldn't be not in the street, because you don't have time to do that. Most people, 90% have probably never had a doggone street fight. They don't know what it's like, because it's mass chaos, and it comes at you all at one time. You don't have time to think about what you're gonna do. You just have to react, and most of the time it's best to be proactive, which is my philosophy. And my dad taught me that. If I realize I'm going to get in a fight with you, I'm not going to wait for you to attack me. I'm going after you. that's my philosophy, and I'm keeping my sons. They all believe in that. Now I'll take that with me until they throw dirt in my face.
Well, here's here's the connection I got with Norm, is that we both got like and I use this term because people probably understand it better. We got like a Viking. We got like a Viking background. Is that we understand violence. We've seen violence, and we know. I mean, the Viking way is not about looking good. It's just about the effects, and we're all talking about that. The effects. What is the result? The result, of course, the objective is to win, to survive, to move on to another day. And I talk a lot about that, and people can come see me and stuff or listen to some other things. I won't go into all that right now, but we got that connection there. I mean, I know exactly what you're saying, Norm. I know the vibe. I know what you're talking about completely. But what I want to do, because you brought up something and it made me think, made me reflect, and so I got to go to Stan with that. And that's and because all this stuff, I did all these parts. I may seem to extol certain like the brute force part of it now, but I've done all of it. But I know that the brute force part's what's the part's going to make you win. So the other parts, like we're talking about self-development and deeper understanding. But he said something, and Norm said stuff in there that leads me to this thing, and I thought immediately about the hero's journey. And I'm pretty certain, because I know Ken and I have read almost all the same books, but I'm guaranteed that Stan, like the Joseph Campbell idea of the hero's journey, and that was played out in Star Wars. And what Norm was talking about is when in Revenge of the Empire, or The Empire Strikes Back, when Luke Skywalker goes into the cave and he has to face his worst demon, and in that moment, and then he thinks it's Darth Vader, but then it reveals that Darth Vader is himself. That sort of inward journey was definitely something I know that you've taken. I know that we do. And I just want you to expand on that, because I think that you can articulate that better probably than the rest of us. So if you would, like, give us that inward battle, because I know that's a place where you've spent a lot of your time, Stan. I mean, that's your niche, really, from what I understand.
Well, first of all, I like to mention something I feel that's very important to me, and that is we each represent a part of the truth. I mean, Bruce's direction for us is to find our own truth, but there's a universal truth among friends, among humans, and I think we all represent a part of that, and we have to share a part of that in order for us to grow. So I like to mention how we bounce off of each other. Okay, I always have a warning when some individual stands up and says, "Listen to me, I'm the gospel." So that always brings up a red light. When we trained together in East St. Louis, whenever we sparred at the end of every class, that was part of the protocol. When Norm and I would square off, I think 9 times out of 10, Norm would come out the victor, because Norm knew how to hit hard. So in a way, you look at that and you look like, okay, you have a winner and you have a loser. But the thing is that when we understand that we're sharing, we all win. There is no loser. That's like a philosophical tenet I like to really stick on, because I gain a lot from Norm beating me up. Really, okay? Because it made me face the truth about my abilities. And I think that's the problem nowadays in terms of the hero journey. Many people want to grasp the title of hero, but they don't want to go on the journey. But believe me, we all know the journey involves failure. If you want something, there's a price to be paid. And buddy, failure is a part of that. So when you look at the new group, sometimes you wonder, well, can they take a hit? Can they take a loss? You kind of feel, because I believe that's a part of the actually core of the hero's journey, is to be able to learn through failure, and you keep going until you reach a point where you're not afraid of failure anymore. So you conquered the mental part of that. When you conquer the mental part, not fearing failure. I mean, I think that takes your physical ability up a couple of notches because that's what I saw in Mike and also in Carl. They were not afraid to fail. And I believe that led to a lot of them being very creative, being very innovative. They would create things, they would create drills, they would create different concepts about their movement because they had overcome that fear. So I think if I had to kind of like conceptualize the hero's journey, it's the willingness to accept whatever that journey requires. And it basically requires a lot of failure. You're gonna pick yourself up a lot. So to this day, I like to give my brother Norm a lot of credit because he helped me a lot picking myself back up again.
Hey, Norm, you handed out some beatings, but now, did you ever think you were going to get congratulated for handing out those beatings, Norm?
No, I didn't. I know I didn't. But I'd like to piggyback off what Stan said about that. In that class, there were no winners or losers because I may have come out on top in terms of the physical, punishment, but I learned a lot from that too. I learned things from Stan and other people in that class. We had this one guy, Wellington, that was had a karate background. He was just stiff and awkward, but man, when he hit you like he was one of these guys that had heavy hands, and I would usually prevail against him too, but getting hit by him made me realize some things about myself. First of all, you had to be able to take a punch. When I first came down to Carl's class, we had a Riley. What was Riley's last name? Sam, was it Harden?
Yeah, Harden.
And dog down there, man. This dude crushed me down there, man. Hit me with some punches, but he never knocked me down, and he never knocked me out. But I was wounded, but I wouldn't stop, and that's what Carl and Mike put me out there because they wanted to see what I was made of if I would quit, and I wouldn't. And that's what led me to be accepted into school. And then they assigned that role to me after Riley left. That role was assigned to me to administer the punishment, especially when people came down into the class wanting to see what it was all about. You know how that happens. And so I was the one that whoop on them. We go around. But all of that, a lot about myself, because first of all, you go into we had a situation where Carl took all of us to a boxing gym called Pop Miles Boxing Gym.
I heard about
and Carl got angry.
I heard about this.
Carl got angry at me because he wanted me to go in there and move around with a boxer, basically a boxer. And I didn't do it. So, because what I did, I just stood up there center line without not a whole lot of movement. And every time he came in and tried to jab me, so I'd punch him and hit him. And the boxer got frustrated with that because he couldn't do what he wanted to do because I wouldn't cooperate with him. Mm-hmm. But Carl didn't like that. But I took that. I was the one in the ring who was going to take that beating and not him. And I wasn't willing to do that. I did what I had to do so I could come out on top. And I've always been like that, and I still do that to this day. I'll do whatever. If I had to pick up a brick and hit you in the head with it, I will. Because it's about fighting and selling whatever comes at you. Because believe me, people these days, man, they don't care anything about you, and especially as grown men as we are now. We don't have schoolyard fights. If somebody attacks you, your life is at risk. They could possibly kill you just from a beating. I'm not willing to go down like that. So I do whatever I have to do to prevent that from happening. And I owe Mike Sandlin, Carl James, the basic thing that they did. They were all about application. There was no funny stuff and are we going to do this and this is going to wow somebody? No. You had to go down there and you had to say it was the stripped down version. And my class is going to follow that same philosophy. I'm not teaching a bunch of fluff. it may not, you may get bored over 6 months. You want to go someplace else. And if you do, that's fine. Go ahead. Because I'm not in this trying to make a bunch of money. I'm trying to pass on what was given to me from these guys and from my father, who was a street fighter, and get it to other people so they can prevail in this world that we live in today that is becoming more violent by the moment.
Yeah, I with your take, and I heard that story before, and I heard it elaborated on actually about the going down to Pops. Yeah, I know that story. Mike told me that. Now I come from a different, just launch into how the training went. I only was training with Mike. I didn't have other people. Big Head Phil was around, but he didn't last long. He had started before me. He didn't last long. But anyway, so I was doing all this stuff with Mike, and so there was things that you guys did that I didn't do, and obviously, but there were things that I did that Mike had created recently, and like Stan was talking about failure. He had failure drills where I was just not going to be successful, and they were character tests. And the thing is, what I see on the path to get back to what Stan, when we're talking about the hero's journey, and is that sacrifice. What I see, a lot of people not willing to pay the price in sacrifices. Like, because I went after this, as you guys know, I became a professional fighter, and I pursued other people. I went to Gene LaBelle, who Bruce had trained with, and I went to John Saylor, the Olympic judo coach. I went to these guys to fill in the parts that we didn't have, and also because Bruce thought highly of Gene LaBelle, extremely highly, and so I went that route. The sacrifices I made, I haven't seen other people make. I gave up women, I gave up jobs, I was sleeping on floors, I was traveling, sleeping in a car, not sleeping for days, not eating very much. I did all those sacrifices, which is part of the hero's journey, in my opinion, and I just don't see people doing that now. And let me throw my take out before, because we got a lot of great stuff here. This is great, and a lot of input from everybody. Here's my thing about Bruce, my Bruce saying that I found, and people want to find me arrogant and iconoclastic and all this other stuff, which is exactly how they found Bruce, and they don't get it. They don't understand the same things they accuse me of in the JKD community was what the martial arts community said about Bruce back in the 60s, in the 70s. And that is, walk on, brother. He said, walk on, brother. So don't become fixated. Don't have, like Ken was talking about having a closed mind, a fixed mind. You're not adaptable. You're not fluid. You're not taking in new things, thinking outside the box, as Stan was talking about. That means don't get locked into this Ted Wong idea of what is JKD or anybody else's idea. What is JKD? What is Jun Fan? It wasn't about that, as Ken was saying, it's part of the process. Those are just steps. They're all steps. You're going to go up the mountain. Those are just steps. And as Norm was saying, you got to face yourself before you can make those steps, because what you're going to only be able to do is imitate other people's steps. But Norm, my analogy here, going up the mountain with steps, is that Norm is telling you that if you watch other people, you'll never be able to take steps that they haven't done. You'll never make it up. Have they made it? You'll only make it to where they've made it. Now, they may give off illusions of accomplishing things, but they haven't reached it, because if they had, they would be liberated. As Stan said, they would be liberated. They would be at the top of the mountain, and from their viewpoint, they could say, there are many paths. There are many paths to take, but I guarantee you there are going to be, you're going to face failures. You're going to face sacrifices on any of those paths that you take to get up here. And as Ken was stating, that you're going to have to hack away at what's holding you back. Like, you're not going to make it up this mountain carrying a ton of baggage. You're going to have to cut. I don't need that grill with me. I don't need that giant tent with me. I have to get up there with the essentials. So everything we're saying fits together, because we all come from the same place. of training. We did it at different times. We all have unique personalities, and we all represent the truth in different facets. And that's what's a beautiful thing to somebody's listening to us, because they're getting straight with these incredible, profound ideas from different perspectives. Each one of them valuable. None of them surmounts or discounts the other. They're synergistic and they work together. And it's just, that was one of my dreams, was to get everybody reconnected. When I found Ken, and Ken was like, yeah, let's do it. Originally, when I first started talking to him over a year ago, it's like, it's time. And it's like, this is the time, because we do represent, in my humble opinion, which isn't that damn humble, is that we which is that, well, if you don't tell people about yourself, who's going to know about you? You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's the difference from the old days. If we don't talk about ourselves, no one will know. No one's going to find us. No one's going to know that this wellspring of information here, that these four guys really know what they're talking about. You know, you guys have got more experience than I do. You guys started before I did. You know, Norm was beating everybody's ass long before I was beating people's asses. You know, I mean, Ken, you and Stan were on the philosophical journey before I was. You guys predate me on that aspect, but I'm continuing it, and I'm the most vocal opponent of all this, proponent, I should say, of this, is that I will give the yin and yang of what's happened at JKD. I will point out the good. I'll point out the bad. I'm not a sycophant. I won't get attached to a certain thing. Like you're saying, get outside the styles. Yeah, you know, Wing Chun, who cares? I don't care about trapping. Ken and I have talked extensively about it. It doesn't figure in. It's all about results. We're all result oriented. So this wellspring of guys, though, is unique. And it's, man, I wish I would have had it. You know, I mean, would have saved me some sacrifice and failure. It would have saved me some of that, Stan. It would have saved me some of the pain that I went through. Although I do think that you have to have pain to make it, to go through this. And that's something that Mike had said to me too. But the point here is that, man, when I listen to each of you guys talk, I just hear it. You know, I mean, I hear this time period that I went through in the training, and I just miss it, you know. And there is, I mean, Ken, what do you feel about this? I mean, I feel like, you know, I hate to make this in religious terms or something, but I feel, you know, it came into me, you know. I mean, I feel as if there's something here that's bigger than all of us, but it's working through all of us. If that makes any sense. I mean, what do you feel, Ken? Am I getting too fanatically weird here, or what? What's going on?
Stan and I have been probably saying almost those exact words for how many decades? And Norm too, actually. No, that's exactly what it is. Look, you know what? It's what's been occurring to me here, thinking about this for a few minutes, is all this stuff is about human evolution, evolution of consciousness. You know, what we're really describing here, and that's why I kind of took it out of the martial art box for a minute, is, man, it's just honest process work to really try to keep figuring out who you are, and to try to be open enough to be willing to continually reinvent yourself. And that's a tricky business, because what happens along the way is you end up kind of stepping on a lot of toes. You're not intentionally trying to do that, but I guess what I'm getting at is we're all on such a philosophical, spiritual journey that is the common bond. And as you said, it manifests differently somewhat for each one of us. But there's so much stuff that I've done in martial art wise Stan doesn't even know all of it yet, because I had a lot of years where I was doing other things too. And I know Norm had times in his life when he was doing other stuff. We've all done that, you know, and we've never even sat down and shared all of that. You know, I go back to, I think what Mike did for us, Carl as well, Dan, all that interconnected, is these guys in their various ways created openings in our minds, in our consciousness. And that's why no one of us had exactly the same experience. But it's almost like you could say, man, if you want to get out there with this, like we're a group, an entity of souls interconnected forever that have roles of teaching and learning from each other. And you never know what's going to happen from one little tidbit of what you get from one if, whether you call here, let's go back to the analogy Stan said, Norm knocking him down all the time. Well, on the surface, it looked like, okay, Norm's just the bigger, stronger guy, and he's knocking skinny little Stan, who was really skinny in those days, down a lot. But then look where Stan took it and what he actually got from that. See, I can think right now little things that Mike said to me, that what he was kind of sort of symbolic sometimes, and I'd go, well, I know what he wants me to do. He wants me to go out and get in a fight. I remember having this exact thought based on something he said to me over at Grand Towers Apartments one day, and we were in the living room, and he said something to me that made me go. So he said it in a way that it's like, you need to go out there and you need to get into it, but it can't be anybody you know. There can't be anybody involved in this. It can't be a like fellow students thing in any way, because you've got to be in that complete unexpected environment, and I've done that several times, and I know that, I hate to admit this, but I know a few of these times I did it deliberately. I did a couple of them right in the middle of the whole CMAA thing, especially toward the end of it, when I was getting a little angry because of things were changing in ways, and I think there were a lot of misunderstandings amongst a lot of us. Didn't understand where the other guy was coming from, and it was developing anger in me, and I expressed some of that anger because I was trying at that time more consciously than ever to really start to whittle away and create my own personal style. I remember all I had to do, I heard the story about Tom Bizio and how he beat the crap out of everybody in the Philippines just by practicing with that 30-inch, 1-inch thick baton, doing ones and twos and just working range changes and doing thousands of ones and twos. And I started taking that approach to training. I started doing that with elbows. I started doing that with knee work. I remember one time during that period, Stan came up to me. We were in the big workout room. It's Stan, and he goes, I don't know if you remember this thing. I hear your elbows are getting pretty good. And I don't, maybe you'll remember this when I finish the story, but he held up some Thai pads and he said, hit me with your elbow. And I hit you. And I remember you just looked at me and you said, you know, if you hit somebody with that for real, you'll likely kill them. And I wasn't sure where to go with that in my head when you said that, but it was just a very interesting statement that made me think about what you were saying on about 5 different levels. So here, the point of this is what I'm getting back to is little experiences like that, which were probably only partially consciously intentional on our parts with each other in various ways. We've all been influenced so dramatically, and we're all smart enough to take the metaphor out of all those things and apply that to how to deal with all kinds of situations that weren't just about that combat aspect. That's something I can't say enough, because I think that's what this stuff's done for me the most, and I keep trying to drive that home with my guys. We did scenario training yesterday. I have a new one. It's called Macho Joe at the Pagan Wine Bar. I had my guys reenact a really tough situation. One of my students got himself into about a month ago at a bar in the Central West End, man. He's at the bar. A guy sits down on the right, a guy sits down on the left. And they've all had a few drinks. The guy on his right is basically talking about what a badass he is, you know, and going on and on and on and on and saying, well, I'm really tough. I got an MMA school I own around the corner. And, you know, Joe's getting tired of it and starts challenging him verbally with it, which, you know, I really chastise him for doing stupid stuff like that. But anyhow, in the middle of the conversation, all of a sudden this happens. Out of nowhere, a gun comes out on the right side, over on his head, and out of the guy's left hand, here's a knife, and he's holding it right in his rib cage, and he's blocked in by this same guy's buddy on his left side, and he's crammed into a really tight spot in a tiny bar with a lot of people around. Now, he got lucky. Technically, he did everything wrong. Instead of trying to de-escalate and figure out a way to get this guy to mellow out, he just started giving him even more crap and yelling at him and getting really angry with him and stuff. And the way in which it worked is there was a realization that, hey, now everybody's called attention. Everybody sees the guy. And he puts the weapons away really fast. But then the guy leaves the place, goes across the street, has a few more drinks, gets whipped up again and comes back in again, and the guy's still there. I mean, he did everything textbook wrong, but he got lucky and got away with it. But point being, these things happen to people, and it's a great way to play off of it and try experiments and see what happens. because that's a pretty tough spot to be hemmed in like that physically, and then suddenly have 2 weapons on you, you know, like that. And then you're thinking collateral damage, other people getting killed, and you're in this very weird, physically weird position. So, you know, so that's a practical lesson, right? Okay. And what's that lesson about? Was a lot of real specific techniques going to be what anybody could use to really survive that? Or is that a kind of a perfect situation scenario to figure out how your intuition and your guts are going to have to kick in to figure out how to survive that?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I agree, and that's the psychological character testing, number one. There's a lot of things we could talk about that, but I want to go back just a step back from you describing that explicit situation. There's something you were saying that you're saying that everything that we're doing is all connected, and that's what I want to say here, because I want to bring this up because I want to go to Stan on this, and it's like I feel immensely connected to you guys, even though I haven't, you know, I've only spent a very out of a lifetime. No, I've really spent no time with Ken or Stan. I've seen them a few times. I was around them a few times, but that's it. But regardless of that, and the fact that I never have been around Norm, because I would have kicked them in the balls if I had. That's an insight. Is that I feel immensely connected to you guys, and well, explain it to me, Stan. you know. I mean, I really feel connected to you guys. I mean, at a base level, at a luminous fiber level, to use Castaneda. I mean, it's incredible. It's this thing. I mean, you know, the Magnificent Seven. It's like the Magnificent Four here or something. But I feel this. Explain it to me, Stan.
I don't know if I can handle that job.
Well, I thought you would be the best equipped, because I think that you've pontificated on that, haven't you? I mean, you pontificated on this. I mean, do you feel I'm okay? Okay. I guess do you guys feel that or not, or is it I'm the only one? I'm the only.
No, of course not. You're not the only one who feels that.
Right? We wouldn't be here.
Well, all right, Stan, you're on the spot. Explain it to us. That's your role.
Well, I'm the resident philosopher. Okay. No, well, Ken said it best. You know, there's an energy. You know, there's an energy that we're sharing. It's just simple as that. You know, we're bringing up, you know, our background experience with our teachers. You know, Mike Sandlin, I tell you, when I first studied with him, and I believe it was late 1970, I thought he was so different in a good way. And as I got to know him, within a year, I realized that this guy was a budding genius. Mike could have been the CEO of a major corporation. He could have exceeded in many different fields, not just martial arts, because this guy understood human psychology better than I think a lot of psychologists do, because he backed it up with practical experience. So, you know, I give Mike, you know, all the credit. Carl came in because he brought back the technology of Bruce Lee. But the thing is that, you know, we're kind of sharing, I think, our gratitude from where we come from. And I think that's part of the feeling that we're all having right now, because, you know, you got to admit that we were very lucky. We were blessed of all the instructors, I think, in the country. It took Carl to say this. So listen to this. Carl, when he left East St. Louis to go to California to study with Dan, he studied for many other martial artists. He went to Canada, studied. He went also to Detroit, Michigan to study with Tommy Hearns in their boxing gym. So anyway, he made a full circuit. And when he came back to East St. Louis one day, he told us, we didn't realize who he had in East St. Louis. He said he couldn't find anybody, probably besides Bruce, that was next to Mike's level. And at that time, I knew Mike was good, but I didn't think he was at that level. Carl said I couldn't find anybody else. So we didn't know we had a diamond. We had a gym in East St. Louis. I mean, little old poor, desolated East St. Louis, you know. But Mike, I said, I think he's kind of like propagated his energy and infused us with his gifts to some extent. So we come together and now we're sharing those gifts that we received from Mike and from Carl. And I think that brings a lot of a different type of energetics. That's the best way I can say it.
Well, okay. Norm, give us the beat down then. Give us the beat down on our connection. I mean, because you're seeing it and you're a practical guy. So give us the inside. What is it? What is it that we got going on?
I think what happened is Mike and Carl developed in each and every one of us what I call a warrior mindset, and we all share that, just like the ninjas or the samurai. We share that, and with that mindset, it has a lot of responsibilities. That means you have a warrior mindset. That doesn't mean you go out and jump on and beat up people and do all kinds of crazy stuff. But it has a lot of responsibility because some of the samurais, they were gifted artists and they had other interests besides combat, but they followed a path. And that path is, we all shared it, and we got that from Mike Sandlin and Carl James. All four of us are warriors, first and foremost. Now, we can take that same mindset and do other things with it. I did. I developed a business and had contracts for 10 years with Illinois Department of Transportation. I didn't know anything about doing consulting work. But just like Ken did, I applied the principles that these two guys gave us, along with Bruce's JKD philosophy, and did that. That's the thing that ties us all together, because we were able to do that, and we recognize that in each other. And it's not a thing that you see with your own eyes, it's your spirit sees that, because each and every one of us, just by being around Mike, we have developed an ability to read people's energy. You can walk into a room and you can just scan the room, you can see who's crazy, who's okay, who I need to be keeping my eyes on. We have the ability to do that, and that was all developed by that time that we spent training with these two guys, reading Bruce's Dao Jeet Kune Do, and hashing that over for years and years. And I read it today and I get something different out of it every time I pick it up. That's the thread that holds us, ties us together. And it's always going to be there, because Stan knows there were other guys in that class that was there, but they're not here. Why is that? Because they did not have the warrior mindset. Stan has that, Ken has it, and you have it, Chris. And nobody can take that away from us. And that was a gift that two guys gave to us that's going to tie us together forever.
Yeah. Well, Ken, what do you say? Ken, you know everyone the best. I mean, all the three of us. You're the guy that knows the three of us the best. You know what I'm saying? Because I mean, you know Stan, you know everything about Stan. You know Norm, and you know me now. So you're in the best position to add to this, I think.
All I would say, for kind of a wrap up on mine end would be, and I've said this before, but to kind of put it in a nutshell. I know, like Stan and I in particular, academically and well beyond, we've studied so many philosophies and philosophers, and Bruce being highly influenced by Krishnamurti, that we went that direction, and we've both gone into a lot of things. But I'll tell you what, the single most important philosopher of all of them to me, from just one statement that he said, is the philosopher Bootsy Collins, when he said, "Free your mind and your ass will follow."
I don't.
And
yeah.
And okay, Stan, I don't know. Ken and I have talked about this. I talked to Norm about this a couple weeks ago, but Stan, you got to be a little bit. Well, we could use unique as a thing, but you got to be a little bit out there to do what we've done, don't you think? I mean, you got to. I mean, you can say the same thing about astronauts, test pilots. you said the same thing about a lot of people, but I think what's here, I mean, some people could look at us because we're not normal people. We are not. I never wanted to be a normal person. I mean, and where do you put that? I mean, do you agree with that, Stan? Do you agree that we're definitely not the normal, even though Norm's name is Norm? He's not.
No.
Well, yeah. When I look back on my life, I couldn't script it because it was, it's such an unorthodox narrative, when I look at things. And like I said, when I met Mike, when I heard about this light-skinned Kung Fu teacher, Kung Fu, and he pronounced it with the G, not a K, because you always look at
Yeah,
the
Southern, yeah, Southern.
yeah, so it was different than David Carradine's Kung Fu,
Yeah.
TV series, right? And I went to check this guy out. I mean, I just saw him move, and I was like starstruck. I said, I got to study with this guy. I got to. He was doing a demo in a gym at Lily Freeman, elementary school, and he had about 30 people in this gym that he was teaching. And I looked at his movement. I said, man, this guy is phenomenal. But then when I went to class, there was only about 6 people. So I'm looking around and said, where's everybody else? So the first thing he does is that he picks up he said, what do you know how to do? I said, well, I had a couple of months of karate. Okay, you know how to sidekick? I said, yeah, I do sidekicks. So he tells 2 of his students to pick up a desk, face flat toward me, about 7 to 8 feet away. And the deal was that they're going to ram me with this wooden desk, and I'm going to sidekick and knock them off. So naturally, what happened was just the opposite. I got knocked on my ass, okay? And he told me to go sit down. That was my introduction. This guy did not call me by name for about a year and a half. My name was Hey You. Hey You, get up and do this. I'll get up and embarrass myself and say, hey, you go sit down. So I was Hey You for about a little over a year. But I don't think many people, and I'm not bragging about myself, but I don't think many people would have stayed with him for that long because he had a tendency to really weed people off. I mean, if you had and Ken and Norm can tell you this, if you had any weakness that he could see and pick on, he just pick at it, and if you were sensitive, you would leave. But for me, I looked at this guy's ability, I said, I want some of what you got. So I think, I'm not saying that I'm above anybody else, but I think maybe I'm just strange or weird or whatever. But I just stayed there. I can't explain it.
It took him 3 minutes to admit that he was weird, Norm. I think that I don't think it take you that. I take you about how long? Tell us that you're weird, Norm. How long does it take us to tell you you're weird?
It didn't take no time. I can remember a conversation with Mike, and he told me to my face. He said, Norm, we're all oddballs. And we are. All 4, we're oddballs. We're not like everybody else, and people can see it. But they see it in a positive way because it projects a sense of confidence and strength. But we are oddballs. We're like a bunch of unicorns running around here, and I'm glad to be like that. I don't want to be like everybody else. I've never wanted to be like everybody else. Even when something is insignificant as buying a car, I didn't buy the car that everybody else thought was popular. I wanted something different because I wanted to stand on my own for who I am. And yes, I am an oddball, just like the other 3 of you guys are too, and we're proud of it.
Yeah. Well, okay. Man, this is so cool. This is so great. But just to keep it tied up a little bit, because Ken said, let's keep it tied up. So I got to bring in, let's kind of switch gears a little bit, but let's talk about everybody's training people. Everybody's training people. And of course, Ken and I are the ones that have been training people all the time. They had never stopped. But Stan is back training people. So tell us what's going on, Stan. I mean, tell us if somebody wants to train with you, what is the process? What do they have to go? What do they have to do if they want to train with you?
Well, there's no really requirements. They just have to, call me. And by the way, I'm gonna have to work on my Facebook because I haven't done much on my Facebook. I don't even think my home number is on my Facebook. and Ken gets on me about that, and Norm as well. But I'm not too tech savvy. Matter of fact, I'm like a tech, probably a tech dummy. So I'm really slow. But all they need to do is to call. And sometimes I like training people with no background whatsoever because they're like an open book. You know, you can guide them, and then they're more accepting. Uh, but I'm 67 at this time, so my view is a little bit more. I think it's a little more lax than I was because I will admit I like to refer my students to other people, like to Norm, to Ken, to Ryan Smith, Muay Thai instructor, because I come to realize that I can't offer everything that this one person needs. I want them to parry my position, what I'm teaching them, to others, because I want them to develop critical thinking. So I think in this point, in terms of my teaching, I like to give them fundamentals in Kali, because I relate more to the Filipino martial arts. So I like to stress more of the fundamentals, the stroking, the footwork, and so forth, the anglicization, the sensitivity, the coordination, and I can send them to Norm for more combat reality because I have to admit that's not my specialty. I can send them to Ken for a lot of the gifts that Sistema have. I can send them to Ron Smith for Muay Thai so they can get their timing down with their boxing and their knee and elbow function. So I like to kind of like share my students basically.
Okay. And so let's go to Norm. Norm, what's going on with your training and stuff?
I'm going down a new path. And Stan and I that's about 2 years ago, we went to a seminar and I went over and talked to him, had a conversation. And I was told by Dan that I need to go out and start my own thing, that there was nothing he could really teach me. And I've done that. I'm a system called Travis Marshall Systems. And I have a compilation of what I taken elements of and boxing, Muay Thai from Ron, some Ken, profess to be a systemic guy or a Kali guy or a Muay Thai guy, but I take things out of those systems that work for me, and I can show other people how I work with them. And all that for some systems, and basically that's what Bruce did. Bruce, he investigated Savat. A lot couldn't go and study with these people for years and years. He had an understanding of those arts and how it applies and how it worked for him, and that's what I'm doing. And I've starting a class that starts on the 10th of next month. Accepting new students. I'm working with a few people. I did it, and I'm looking forward to doing this at 66 years old. And I've been lucky enough, my son and my grandson. My son is also a instructor. He teaches a system called VSK. So we get together. We got 3 generations of martial arts, and our dream is to train just like the Gracies, because we all do this. And I'm training my sons. I think he's around 8 years old, and he took it and ran with it. He went through all the different systems and BJ and Muay Thai studied Muay Thai and a lot of. That's why I'm at it. I'm about this, ready to get started because I want to share what I know. Well, when I'm gone, it's like Carl is no longer with on us, especially me and Stan. It's still there. So I would like that to be my legacy.
Okay. We got some echo going on. But let's go, Ken. I know you got a workshop coming up. So tell us about the workshop Tell us how they get hold of you.
Well, yeah, it'll just be a half a day. It's knife defense work. There'll be a lot of new drills I have not shown before, just because I never got around to it yet, really. So that's what I'm trying to do. Is there's a lot of other key drills that I want guys to have, and so that's sort of what I'm doing. There's going to be a lot of new material, but it's all practical, and it's a little more expansive in the sense of the environment in which the person will have to function in. As you know, it's not simple just always standing right up, being in front of the guy. It's going to be a little more challenging than that, especially if the weather's not cooperative, because my plan is to keep it outside, and if the weather gets a little funky, we still plan to go anyway. You know, environmental hardship is a good training tool. Being in bulkier clothes, being on wet, slippery ground, all those things add elements that it's good for people to understand. So in a nutshell, that's what we're going to do. Knife defense work. It'll be empty hand versus knife. A lot of drills, a lot of practical ways to do that. It'll bring out a lot of movement. And the easiest thing to do right now is to copy that number down. I'm using high-tech cue cards here. And somebody wants to come, give me a call. I'll tell you where we're going to be outdoors. It's actually in Forest Park here in St. Louis.
Cool. Great. So let me plug myself, because the same weekend, next weekend as what Ken's talking about, 27th. He's talking October 27th, Saturday. That's when his thing is at. Mine is the 26th, the 27th, and the 28th. Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Friday night, 3 hours. We're doing 13 hours. It's a tribute to the 13 hours of Benghazi. This is a counter-urban violence training. It's very productive on getting results. You're going to go through it's exactly how I train when I train different military contractors. It's just not quite as hard or as long as I train them, but it's the same thing. And that will be happening in Ravenna, Ohio, which is about within 45 minutes of Cleveland, Ohio airport, actually. And you can contact me by going on my Facebook, looking at the things I put up notices about it. It's also on my websites, fluentfighting.com and combat-judo.com. So that we'll hopefully talk. Ken and I will talk again before those events one more time, I hope. But so I just want everyone to realize to go back through this video and take notes, because there's a lot of stuff said here that at first hearing may not seem so important, but later I'm telling you it's going to be very salient to your path. It will be. So I'm going to take us off the air now, but hang on, guys. Hang on. I'm just going to take you off air. We're still going to talk, okay? So, hey, everybody, go to our websites, like and share this. You can contact me if you want to get hold of Stan or Norm. And Ken put his phone number out there. So he especially would like hot chicks to call him. So if you're a hot chick.
Norm's got his up there too. Norm got his number up. He just put it up a minute ago.
Who did?
Norm, when you were talking, he put his number. There it is. He's got it up again.
Okay, hang on. Okay. And okay, so thanks for watching, everybody. Like, share this. We're controversial, and I always will be. If you don't like it, too bad. And so we'll talk to you. We'll all talk to you again, because this is a great forum, great thing happening. But hang on, guys. I'll be right with you.